Carolina learned to move wearily lately. Her father stood in darkness illuminated by the moon. His warriors learned to answer without looking at him. They didn't see any enemies, orc, dwarf, or anything else, especially of his son. Caroline made her way to her father, along the way being nice to the guards and giving them wood for their braziers. Her father said that warm makes soldiers dull, and then asked if that wood was from his hearth, but she said it was from hers, as she justifies that cold soldiers and slow soldiers. She told her father the men-at-arms will bring news, but he asked when. It's been a while. Carolina tried to justify that divination doesn't work, but he was told a bray herd will attack them and that he should keep his vessels at sea. She asked where is he then, and he didn't like that. He turns around as tears fall from his eyes and say that he will return, he must return. The Baron was a mighty warrior, but what is breaking him is the idea of his son missing. Bretonnia wasn't in a better state, orc raids and all. She tried to say something to her father, but a guard screamed about seeing sails. It was the Dragonheart, the sun's ship. Everyone was happy for that. The ship was in a bad state. Once brought in, the ship smelt of dead. Carolina was first there and found a dead body. It looked like he died years ago. Same for the other dead. One figure with a hood stood there. It was her father's astrologer, who also didn't look that well. The astrologer said to burn the ship, but Caroline asked about her brother. And the crew came to life, living dead. She started to fight them. When one was cut, he just feel, but nothing came out of the wound. Her father and some men-at-arms joined the fight before they burned the ship. Baron asked about his son. The astronomer was dying. The astrologer said they kidnapped her, dragged into the tomb of an undead queen. But he still knew he was alive. The astrologer got some paper from the tomb that basically tells them he is alive, but they plan to sacrifice him. The Baron wanted to send Carolina, but she didn't want to go. She proposes to get allies, but the border lords wouldn't commit to it. She then says to ask Cara of Kerrol, kinfolk. But the Baron doesn't think he will join, in part because despite the debt owed to the Baron, our concerned father didn't much like him anymore. We go to the border princes, a place of low morals. The army of Cara reached the castle. He got the message to help his cousin, and with regret, he had to inform the King Leon Orcslayer that he couldn't participate in his campaign as this matter of honor needed to be dealt with. Varro was a good knight, but he became more of a steward, and this call for aid was his moment to prove himself. Cara looked with disdain at the realm of his cousin. At the castle, Varro and a Pegasus knight talk about the fortifications. They went to the castle and entered the Baron's court after screaming at him, if this is how he is going to keep him. There, Varro sees Carolina. Cara announced his men that some insults fester. The Baron didn't greet the Duke for a long while. Carolina came in and greeted her uncle. The Baron insults Cara, and the two almost start to fight. Carolina tried to stop him. The commotion stopped when the ladies' handmaidens appeared and everyone stopped. After some shaming and a Grail Knight appearing, a feast started. Varro and Carolina start talking in a quiet place, and it goes okay until Carolina keeps asking Varro, also known as the Knight of the Quills, if he can fight. He gives his resume, angrily but understandably. She gives him water and asks why Varro has two different colored eyes just like Cara. The next day, the Bretonnians sailed to the land of the dead. Varro was not enjoying his time at sea. Lord Cara didn't like but wasn't that affected. The Lord spoke good of his cousin, but when Varro wanted to hear more about their campaign in Araby, Lord Cara refused. Varro walked on the ship and found some knight-errants that wanted to make fun of him, but he scared them with talk about fighting the living dead. Later the Grail Knight appeared in front of him and took Varro with him to the one of the lady handmaidens, a person he once knew. He thought they could be together again, but she said no. They get close the shore and make the plan. The Baron emphasizes that their goal is to get his son back. The Baron tells Carolina to make the plan. She tells then what it is. The astrologer talks about the fleet of the dead that was technically gone thanks to an earthquake. They had a map made by the astrologer. Varro presumed their ride to Kemri would take about a week. Of course, if this was Bretonnia, it would have been 2 or 3 days. The Baron says they've endured worse when the Duke talked about the downside. The undead still had some vessels, of the imperial kind. We get some lore drop about how powerful and terrible the kings of this land used to be until a necromancer brought destruction. Varro tried to get his horse out, but the scent of death and blood almost got him killed. But a man came and saved him by calming down the horses. Varro went to the man after the horses were calm to thank him, but the man just made hand gestures at him. Varro couldn't get it. Carolina then comes and tells him that the man can't talk, so he uses sign language. She responds with the sign language, because her brother was born without hearing. The man presents himself as Sigurd of Ever, but French. Varro asked if he is related to the Duke, but Carolina chastises him to speak to the mute. The Duke was the man's father. Varro fought alongside his brother. Anyway, Sigurd says this was the only way he could help. The army would move at night, thanks to the scorching heat of the sun. The sand was a problem, rough, coarse, and it gets everywhere. Besides that, nobody bothered them. Sigurd seemed like a leader for the peasants that wanted to distinguish themselves, or that chose this instead of dying and being forgotten in a dungeon. They pass old ruins of a forgotten civilization. Varro talks to one of the knight-errants that wanted to make fun of him, and basically tells him to not pick on Sigurd and that the errant has the potential to be the best of them. Though nothing opposed them, the stillness was unruly. Next, we get the story of Sigurd, who became deaf because of a pox that also killed his mother. His chance of knighthood was gone. During a squire tournament where knights picked their future squires, he wasn't allowed to participate. He threw a fuss and got slapped and demoted to menial tasks. When the request for help came to his father, he volunteered and was let go. He got to take his brother's sword and a silver stallion that didn't want to listen to him. Then came Lord Carus Pegasus Knight, who complained that she knew his struggle because her father didn't let her take the knight's vows until way later. She also managed to feed the stallion, let's just call Severin. Varro was sitting and Carolina comes with fresh, cool water to him. Varro doesn't drink BTW. They talk a little about how the people survived here and how sometimes the rulers of Nehekara were pretty evil. Carolina says maybe that's why they are deed the people revolted against them, but Varro tells her it's a different issue. He then opens his heart at Carolina's insistence to talk about how he knew one of the ladies' handmaiden. Later on he talks with the Grail Knight and finds out he did really live a long time. And the alarm bell rang. They were attacked by all manners of undead, coming from the sand, just dust and bone. The Bretonnians fought as hard as they could, the Grail Knight leading the charge into the undead ranks. But the undead had their own answer, a skeletal knight on a serpentine-like mount. The skeletal knight was a hard foe to defeat. Varro even thought he would die to it, but thanks to the Grail Knight, it got defeated. The maidens helped heal people here and there. They couldn't save them all, but one of them learnt an important reasons. Then the Bretonnians get a morale boost because they fight for the lady. Varro gets approached about Carolina, and we learn that the Knight of Quills holds on to the wedding ring he wanted to give to the maiden. We also learn that Carolina and her missing brother are only brothers thanks to their father, because they have different mothers. Her Og mom fell off her horse and broke her neck. Anyway, they start marching in the daylight at the orders of the Baron. By sundown, they reached the necropolis of Khemri. In front of them was the pyramid of the first king of Nehekara, but above it towered the Black Pyramid of Nagash. They went into the dead city. Sigurd started to panic about the horror of the living dead. Severin came and tried to support him and encourage him. Encourage in a way, she is telling him that it's normal to be scared. Siedri takes him and resents him to her company of Fire Emblem units. She then takes him to show her Pegasus. The Baron took the first step on the pyramids of Nagash and promised they will find their link. Carolina was forbidden to go with her father, but she was annoyed. Varro wanted to join, and then Lord Kara comes and tells him to just stand that. Varro then bursts that he will not do it. The Lord said because of those years of service he will overlook that outburst. Varro wants to know why. Kara tells him that once this is done he will tell him. So Varro is stuck outside. The Grail Knight comes and says he will go with the Lords and asks Varro to take care of the maidens. He accepts. They do a little ritual where Varro touches the Grail Knight's sword. Severin, the Pegasus Knight lady, takes Sigurd away and they kiss. And now it becomes a Sandra Brown novel. At some point they fall and a black sword stabs Sigurd's hip. Varro and Carolina again. Carolina complains that her father went ahead. Varro also complains how he came here seeking renown and glory. Carolina didn't like that and again chastised Varro. Sigurd came and said they must come with him. They were taken to the place the two fooled around. There was an opening in the wall. Carolina took off first. Varro goes after her at the push of his former lover. At some point they found a dead body. She chastises Varro again. She really is insufferable. They found a medallion of Carolina's mother. Varro tries to protect his former lover and tells her to stay behind him, but Howe says he should stand behind her. Carolina goes off. The two go after her. They reach the other group of knights protecting the other handmaidens. The astrologer started to transform into a creature. The handmaidens were terrified at the creature's face. A skinwalker of sorts. Varro asked what and who the creature is. The creature was the High Lich Priest, keeper of law, venerator of corpses. The knights of the Baron marched in, dead eyes and all. Carolina asked what did he do, but the Lich Priest continued presenting himself. A creature of towering power appeared, the Queen of the Dead. Varro was scared. She had empty eye sockets. She wasn't a pretty sight. The undead knights made a circle around her. The Queen vomited a black substances, embalming alchemy. Two round objects rolled in the black fluid. They rolled until they reached Varro and Carolina. The heads of Cara and the Baron, Sigurd and his new lover, ran to alarm the army. Sparks of light was brining the dead city back to life. The whole city raised to life as light appeared at the tomb. Sigurd now regretted his decision. There would be no glory to earn here, though. The Pegasus Knight took his head and kissed him, told him no fear, then ordered him to prepare the peasants because she and her sisters would punch a way out. Varro was in shock as he looked at the head of his former master. The Britannia scouts shot arrows. They hit the Queen, but nothing happened. Carolina attacked, the knight-errants attacked as well. The handmaidens attacked the Lich. The Queen, much like the Lich, was unaffected by the attacks. The Lich wanted to attack back. Varro was offended that he would dare attack the lady's handmaidens. Black venom hit one of them and hurt her. The other one cried and tried to save her. Varro told the knight-errants to protect the ladies with their life. Varro and Carolina fought together against the Queen. The Tomb Queen slashed at Varro. Varro wanted to stab her in the heart, but the sword broke. A shard stabbed him close to his eye, his shoulder slashed. Thrown far away. Carolina came and tried to get him away. Against the Queen and her knights, some zealous lunatics that follow Grail Knights tried to fight with the Queen and her knights. But they didn't stand a chance. Carolina took Varro away. He needed a sword and Carolina gave him a regular sword. When he asked about the handmaidens, she said the errants were protecting them and they should join them. The Pegasus Knight flew in the army and they charged the undead archers. Once the ruins' rooftops were clear enough, the Pegasus regrouped. Varro appeared with Carolina, but there was no sign of Lord Cara or the Baron. Carolina said Sigurd told her that the Pegasus would clear away. Carolina really emphasized the point that they either leave now or they don't leave at all. Varro saw only red. He was angry, but he didn't really understand what was happening. He was in great pain. A white light flashed. He slipped in and out of conciseness, reliving parts of his life, the ones that didn't matter, tedious, with the exception of one, in which he saw over Lord Cara's shoulder a woman with one eye of blue and one of hazel. He forgot about this memory long ago. He knew the name of the woman but couldn't remember. And then searing pain stuck him again and again and again. He was on his back and found his injury bandaged, and now he remembered things. His road to the land of the damned and the head of his lord. He was in a wagon. Varro started feeling better. The knight-errant that wanted to mock him greeted him. Form him Varro learns he was out for 5 days. The errant took Varro to a hill. Archers looked at him, but they didn't care about him. Some even looked at him as a betrayer. Going down some stairs, Varro saw 70 or 80 horses. He remarked how few they were. The rest then said there are fewer people to ride them. They meet with Carolina, who looked happily to see Varro. Sigurd said it's good to see him, in sign language. He can also speak and form words. He does that with his Pegasus Knight lover. Why he doesn't do it with Varro is a good question. Carolina pulls him in a tight embrace. Varro learns of the sacrifices made to save them. 67. Knights with 70 peasants was all that remained of the host. Many lost to the skeletons, others to the heat or lack of supplies. They marched for 2 days, but the undead kept following them. Carolina said it was a trap from the start. The handmaidens also survived. The injured one had red wheals on her skin, black veins and blood-rimmed eyes. Varro went to her, and he wanted to help her. She said she can. Varro asked for forgiveness, but the handmaidens didn't know why. When Varro told her, she said his honor remains intact. There is nothing he could have done to prevent this. The visions the maidens get shown what might be possible, not only what is. The maiden told Carolina that her ancestors fought alongside the elves. She had one more request, to see the sky knee last time. Carolina and Varro help her by holding her. The handmaiden talks about how beautiful this kingdom was, and how it was destroyed by the conquest of eternal life and madness. She said to look tot the sky, a shooting star appears. The handmaiden reaches her hands the starlight to grab it. The shooting star responded as it came to them. Night turned to day. Carolina and Varro were no longer in the desert, but in a misty forest. The handmaiden stood next to them, no longer injured, but beautiful. The handmaiden was called home to the realm of the lady. Carolina was also scared. The handmaiden gave him an ancient sword, filled with power, the sword of the Grail Knight, but he didn't take it and said it's hers, referring to Carolina. The two were back in the desert, and the handmaiden was gone. Carolina looked like she learned some esoteric knowledge. Varro talks about the wild ancient forest, the primal place of the lady. Carolina was agreed, but she was uncertain. Now she looked and saw the powerful sword of the Grail Knight. The sword was changed to a cavalry saber instead of the greatsword he saw. Varro found his horse. Sigurd came to him with his silver horse. Varro talks about the horse with Sigurd, saying he knew the horse and that he will need a brave rider. Sigurd says he knows. Now he just talked. Everyone gathered to make their next plan. The undead were a day behind them. Carolina's plan was to reach an orc pirate ship and take over the ship. It was a little far from them. The errant knight comes with the plan of fighting the undead and killing the lich. That would in theory work. With the lich gone, the undead would be gone. Varro argues against it. Carolina wants to go with her plan to go north for the orc ship and have a continuous march. Varron says they could also go full north, then west for the sea. But they had to go through the marsh of madness. The host moved on. Carolina told Varro they must keep faith and not lose it because all those men depend on them. The Pegasus Knight came to Varro and told him she taught Sigurd flying signs, and Sigurd taught her his sign language. 2 arrows fly in front of Varro, making an X. In front of them appeared the broken body of Carolina's brother. He looked like he died. Carolina cried and went to him. He recognized him. Her brother apparently came back from the dead. That body they found, it was his. Varro and the rest didn't believe it and held their weapons at ready. Her brother begged, and to her, he looked like her brother. She said that is her brother, certainly. The warriors lowered their weapons. Sigurd still had his weapon up, annoying Carolina. The brother told her he got out of the queen's sacrifice that wanted to bind his body. He wanted to warn her that death was coming, starting with her. Carolina wanted to speak, but a powerful pain stabbed her chest. A light flashed in the sky. She wanted to give in to the exhaustion. The handmaiden told the brother to get away from her. Carolina had blood in her mouth. She fell into the hands of Varro. The handmaiden turned from a gentle woman to a fierce creature filled with power, her steps creating grass and filling the air with perfume. An emerald light shot from her. The brother tried to not look at the light. Carolina wanted to save him, but Varro told her no. The glamour of the creature were torn away, the brother's body on the ground, its black soul wanted to be freed. Flowers rose from the brother's black armor. It wasn't the brother, it was the lich. The handmaiden pushed the knife in the body, that now was stuck to a tree that grew suddenly. Under magical force, the lich reveals he was there to kill Carolina because her sword is the sword used by the elf queen to strike down Cetra. He needs the sword to remake the broken mind of his queen. Carolina now saw the dagger in her chest. She realized what happened. The handmaiden put a green pendant on her. Now we go to the Pegasus Knight. In the air she saw the world's mountains, and she remembered the explanations for how they formed. She and her squads landed on a part of the mountain. The coast was very fat away. She saw an orc camps. From her knowledge, there were 3 tribes here. It was going to be a hard march. For now, the host took a break. Carolina was under a tree shed and Varro was watching over her. The handmaiden did everything she could to save her, but the blade was touched with a poison she didn't know. Only time could tell if she would survive. They found some idols of Nehekara, letters written upon them, after some little talk between the errant and the handmaiden about how nobody but vile necromancer speak the old language of Nehekars. She realizes that somehow she can understand the strange writing. It wasn't Nehekana, but a priestly chant. "Nothing goes in, nothing comes out," was what it said. Sigurd came. Varro asked for them to come to him because Carolina was waking up. Carolina woke up, better than ever. The errant and the handmaiden joined her and Varro. They talk a little about her brother, how the soul and body of her brother is now impeded in that singular tree in the middle of the desert. They check, and Carolina no longer has her wound. Hell, no, even a scar. Even the handmaiden was surprised. When she healed someone, there always remained some trace of the wound. The Pegasuses got injured because of bolts. Somehow orcs managed to spot them. They cut their looses, took their injured, and flew right back to the camp. Once there, she screamed for the handmaiden. The handmaiden came and tries to heal the injured Pegasus sister. Varro asked her what she saw. Orcs as far she the eyes can she. She screamed at Varro and they both knew she need to get rid of the tension. The handmaiden came. She didn't manage to save the Pegasus knight. She didn't get a grave, but her body was burned at a pyre and her ashen taken away, to not remain and be reanimated by the lich. They marched. Dehydration took its toll, more so on the animals. Varro and Carolina discuss about giving them a break. After a while, they look over a map and see a stargazer tower. That meant that where built nobles would be there. The problem is that they would have to go deeper into the marsh than they wanted, but that would protect them from the orcs and undead. The marsh was a marsh, duh. They passed next to ruins. Sigurd looked at a place where he thought he saw something. The handmaiden said there used to be a great king where the marsh lays, but she didn't know more than that. Sigurd thought he saw an enemy. He told his lover that must be an enemy there. But she was not all that focus, her Pegasus having an injured wing since the attack from the orcs. Carolina passed a body and was being tormented by her brother's voice. The voice was judging her. The voice turned to her father and she thought of her father whose head was not cut off, but bitten off. Regretted filled her. She realized all those thoughts were not of her own. Before she realized it, she saw the same body once more. The voices in her head were the voice of the body. She told the voice to shut up. Now it was the time for Varro to be filled with regret. He looked at the handmaiden and she spoke softly that they will be out soon. It took away some of the pressure on Varro, but once she looked away, it came back even heavier. The voice pushed him to chastise the knight-errants, but Carolina's scream made him turn back. She was in the water, slashing at the swamp, screaming shut up. She said she had to kill the man with the silver eyes. As Varro tried to calm her, they realized something. There was an empty saddle. The lady of the lake was gone. Varro took her horse and caught up the handmaiden. The maiden walked in the cold water, telling him that she was being called by her fellow maiden. Intrusive thoughts came in Varro, but Varro pushed them away and managed to make her see the truth. A little more convincing, and Varro managed to bring her to reality. Varro took the handmaiden, his former lover, and pulled her from where she was going. The cold, unbearable. Varro fell in the water, but the handmaiden got him up. As the swamp attacked, Varro's horse came to his rescue, but the horse got taken by the swamp. The rest of the group debated what they must do. Sigurd wanted to go after Varro and the handmaidens. Carolina technically wanted to do the same, but she was the leader of this host. Sigurd saw them and pointed at them. Varro was wounded when he fought the ghosts of the swamp. Some more talk, and the handmaiden said, "The power lady is in her, and she and the land are one." The maiden screamed, light coming out of her and remaking the earth where it struck. Grass and wildflowers bursts from the ground, the tree growing healthy bark. Life came back to the swamp, fishes, insects, birds. Carolina was amazed to see the power of the lady. Soon the magic was gone from the handmaiden. Carolina wanted to ask how she did it, but the handmaiden repeated herself and nodded her head like she understood. They reached the Stargazer's tower. Carolina and Varro met in a library of the tower. The peasants camped in the courtyard. Sigurd was eating an apple and going around the courtyard. A figure touched his shoulder and gave him an apple. After we get Sigurd that wasn't a fan of the divide between the peasants and the nobles. The horses were disturbed. That was strange. Sigurd went to inspect and saw a monstrous being, a flesh-eater. He remembered his lover saying packs of flesh-eaters. Throwing his torch to make a big fire, he saw 100 of flesh-eaters. He rung the alarm bell. Carolina and Varro watched the stars. Varro asks Carolina about her mother, who was gone before she was born. Varro thinks Lord Cara cucked the Baron after the crusade in Araby. He explains that weird memory and the portrait he saw. The same figure was in the locket of the brother, one eye of blue and one of hazel. Carolina caught one and said that's not possible. Varro deduced he is the spawn of their relationships. Carolina says that can't be. Most of their people have heterochromia. Varro says his parents don't. So that makes him Carolina's brother's half-brother. That explains why Cara didn't want him in the pyramid, why the Baron looked with hatred at him. Carolina asks if they are related, but Varro says they aren't. That was a relief for her. The alarm bell rang. Sigurd held close to the bell. He killed a flesh-eater. Another beast came at him. Sigurd pushed it backwards. Sigurd was fighting alone. Luckily, the place was confined enough to fight them one-on-one. The monsters managed to claw at him, hurting him. There was nothing he could do to stop them. Carolina and Varro go to the courtyard. Other knights joined the courtyard to join the fight. They were being attacked on two ways. Varro would take some knights and go to another way. Carolina trying to raise the morale of the people. Varro and his men fought the creatures trying to outflank them. It was a long battle. A squire dragged the body of Sigurd. He was still alive, though. The young knight errant got hurt in the fight. Varro tried to rescue him. Pegasus knights rode in to save them. While it seemed the errant was about to die, he got back up. A flesh-eater appears on a hybrid between bat and werewolf, and it does some psychic attack on them. The knights tried to get to a safe place. Varro and the errant fought against the carrion king, both knights stabbing the mount's wings. The king came down from his hurt beast. The king was fast and beat the two knights and went for the handmaiden. She tried to fight against the carrion king. The handmaiden felt that as strong as the carrion king was, he was bound to another stronger. She told the creature that he is no king but a slave. The king threatened to throw her off the bat. She saw the king hanging on the creature, so she exposed her shoulder, inventing feasts for this king. Now the king has a beast, but it wasn't a moron. She tried to convince him to eat her. The beast gave in and approached his mouth to her. The beast won against the man. Before he could do anything, the errant stabbed the carrion king through the chest. The king no longer cared about his mission. The handmaiden stabbed him with her blessed dagger. The mount gave in and the handmaiden fell from the beast. Varro found her as she fell from the creature. She asked where was the knight errant. He wasn't that fat away, he was dying. Varro and Carolina held the errant, and the handmaiden looked at her back, promising she won't let him die. Sometime later, the handmaiden took Varro and Carolina to the stables where the errant was. The handmaiden called the light of the lady to heal him. Varro tried to raise the rant's morale, but his voice was barely a whisper. Varro says he was a hero for trying to save a handmaiden of the lady. She tried to heal him. She felt the scale of the terrible damage done to the errant. It was terrible. She poured her power into the knight. The errant started to feel pain. Varro asked if it's working. His former lover didn't answer. She knew the damage was terrible, but she wouldn't give up. As much as she tried, she didn't have the power. As the handmaiden gave up, Carolina said that there is something she could do. If the power of the lady was low here, they could take him to Britannia and heal him properly. The handmaiden says there is nothing to be done. He will live, but he won't walk again. The errant said she should have let him die. At dawn they departed the castle. They had little provisions, so they didn't have to use the wagons. They had no idea how far the undead army was from them. They reached the Dragon Pass. We get another sign of Sigurd and his Pegasus knight lover. Varro and Carolina lead 54 knights and 54 peasants. Sigurd went to see how the errant Bastian is. He was in pain and disappointment to have lost his ability to become a knight. Sigurd tried to convince him that he was alive, and that was enough. Sigurd told him of the pox. They spoke with their fingers. They bond over Sigurd's past. But Bastian was sure that he couldn't become a proper knight when half his body is crippled. Sigurd promised to make him a special saddle that would let him become a knight. Bastian asked him if the handmaiden could cure his deafness, if he would take it. Sigurd said now no, as a child, yes. Bastian then told Sigurd how the voice of his lover sounds like. He said it in a poetic way. They found some crashed ships at the roof of the world and wondered how they got there. But a storm was coming and one of them will be used to shelter themselves. One of the ships was part of Gilles de Breton's fleet many years ago. They got inside. Varro and the handmaiden get to talk. He refers to her as my lady. She wished she didn't do it, but she observed something is different at him. Varro took out the wedding band he wanted to give to the handmaiden before he was chosen by the lady. He wouldn't keep it. She tells him that if the lady didn't call her, she would have said yes. They go back and meet their men. They were playing a game of cards. Carolina wanted her Varro to take her place, but the handmaiden decided to join in. Varro and Carolina knew clear that the handmaiden would clear them. Some matches later, Varro felt a low rumble, and so too did the rest of the men. Sigurd went to see what it was. Varro went after her. The clouds parted and the moon illuminated a large creature. It was a giant, with a barrel the size of an outhouse. They tried to gather their bearings. The horses were disturbed. Carolina had no plan as they hid from the giant. Waiting wasn't an option. The Pegasus Knight comes and tells them what they already knew, that they can't fight the giant. The plan was now to use the Pegasus Knights to distract the giant and for the rest to get out and run as hard they can. The Pegasus Knights annoyed the giant, but the giant stepped on one of them. Severin cut at the giant as much as she could. The rest of the Pegasus Knights did the same. Another knight got killed by a headbutt. Severin wanted to take it down. The other Pegasus Knight blocked her way and tried to convince her to move. They did their part. The host was already riding west. As they marched, Carolina and Varro talked. They were technically proper lords. Varro wouldn't become a duke. It was too risky of a situation, and one that had no honor. He knew that he would bring news of the dead duke to his family, and after he didn't have any idea, Carolina said her castle always has a place for him, with her. Varro threw the ring in the lake. He said nothing. Who got to them? The Tomb Queen. They were close to the Orc Corsair post. The undead had a massive army appearing in utter silence. Varro still held some hope, but he knew this was bound to come. Carolina looked at Varro and the soldiers. Radiant green energy illuminated everyone. She got stronger from the pendant that saved her life. She held the hand of Varro, and a stronger light gleamed from it. The handmaiden asked if they will receive the lady's blessing. Everyone kneel in front of her except Bastio, who held his head low. The handmaiden gives a speech to raise the morale of the host. Varro called out Sigurd, Bastion and another. He knighted them properly by virtue of their honor, valor and skill at arms. The three voices swore to obey their king and eternal devotion to the Lady of the Lake. Now they would fight. Varro was offered the gorse of the Grail Knight. Carolina wanted to give him the sword, now transformed from a saber to a great sword. After some convincing, he took it. Carolina hugged him. Carolina and Varro would each lead a lance. The lance was a tactic first invented to be used against orcs. The plan was for the lances to move and meet in the heart of the enemy, to cut the queen and the lich. Sigurd gave his father Silver Horse to Bastion. Varro called for his men. This was their moment for eternity, for glory. The knights cheered. This next chapter is called Lords of the Lance. Varro had one target and the distance between them got smaller and smaller. Varro and his knights smashed into the undead. The power of the charged lifted the first undead hit. Sigurd was pulling up a good fight. They got close to the queen's banner. Varro felt her gaze upon him. Bastion had a problem controlling the horse, as Sigurd told him. The horse was one to be swift, not a regular war horse. He was riding to the Orc Corsair town. He shouted at the orcs, trying to taunt them. He drew his sword and cut some orcs. The orcs tried to surround him, but the horse was too fast for the orcs. A orc captain came out. The captain was enormous, and he had an enormous axe. The orcs did a war cry. More and more orc came. The Bastion turned his horse around, going back the way they came. Carolina fought against the undead. She and her lance broke through the enemy formation. Carolina blew the war horn. Undead warriors were falling out of the blue. Her men cheered. Carolina saw the banners of the queen. She wanted to blow her horn, but 9 riders appeared from a cloud of darkness. Those were the Black Steel Riders, knights of her family. They moved slow with menace. Another raider told her those aren't the men she fought and drank with. Varro felt his horse was untouchable, as he killed a scorpion creature. Varro, Sigurd and the handmaiden stopped a little, and the lich appeared. The undead asked for the sword of the Grail Knight. Varro marched towards the lich. The sound of battle was impossibly distant. Varro knelt and stabbed the sword in the ground, presented himself, then got up and challenged the lich in an honourable duel. The lich sent forward a champion, and felt terror hit him. It was the Grail Knight. The Black Steel Riders were not what they were in life, so Carolina and her men managed to kill them. One stabbed her in the back, but she managed to kill that knight. She remembered each one of the knights that attacked her. The Tomb Queen came to attack Carolina, making her fall from her horse. Some spears and arrows managed to hit the hideous queen of the undead. Carolina and Varro fought their enemies. The advantage of the knights was fading away. The queen almost killed Caroline, but one of the Pegasus knights attacked the queen and the queen killed her. The dead woman started to age rapidly. Varro was filled with light. The world around him seemed frozen, including the Lich. The handmaiden walked to the undead knight. Varro wanted to save her, but he didn't when she saw her shake her head. The revenant came to face the handmaiden. She touched the heart emblem of the knight and called for Varro. He went to her and wanted to behead the creature, but she said no. He lowered the blade as the knight had his hand out. The handmaiden said the knight requires the sword for a moment. The eyes of the revenant were those of the noble knight, and not the dead eyes. Grail knights were things of mystery. The Grail knight wanted to finish his task. Varro understood and gave him the sword. The Grail knight moved to the Lich. The Lich tried to stop his creation. The Grail knight split the Lich priest in two. The Grail knight disappeared. The energies sustaining the dead were gone. They didn't all go instantly. Some lingered longer. The champions of the dead still managed to maintain their form, and around them a few warriors. The queen was in pain. Carolina could see what the queen felt: fear. The terror of eternal darkness that brought ruin to their empire. The Pegasus knight Severin charged first, agged the Queen Carolina, and another joined in. They cut the queen, and finally Carolina stabbed her. The queen reborn a being of flesh and bound. She wanted life and Carolina gave her. And then Carolina continued. The queen's body was blotting. It just grew. Then she blew up her flesh, incinerating as it separated from her body. Varro rode to Carolina and her warriors as the queen was blotting. Within seconds they made it through the dead, and they reached Carolina as the queen exploded, leaving grass behind her. Varro went and hugged Carolina. Warrior of the dead still remained. They would eventually disappear, but not soon enough. Varro listened to what sounded as approaching thunder. He knew what that was. He ordered everyone to mount up and be ready to ride. The orcs clashed into the remaining undead. Bastian did his job properly. He suggested to go to the coast where there were ships. Bad-looking one, but they would work. In the port, only goblins remained, so the host cut them and sailed. The ships took water and they barely worked, but they managed to get them across the gulf. They reached Tilia, but the ships sunk after. Varro watched the ships collapsing. Carolina joined him. In front, a green light emanated, the light that appeared in the tomb. A spiteful whisper came. The whisper was Cetra, a promise of endless war. The handmaiden said the king of the dead had awakened.